There is a place in North America where polar bears outnumber people, where 57,000 beluga whales gather each summer in waters so remote the nearest road is over 1,000 kilometers away, where the northern lights dance across the sky 300 nights a year. This is not Alaska. This is not Norway. This is Manitoba, Canada's forgotten province. Travelers have documented a wilderness that defies expectation, a place where you can stand in a desert of towering sand dunes, then drive to a color-changing lake that shifts from turquoise to milky white before your eyes, where Viking descendants maintain traditions older than Canada itself, and where Indigenous peoples have gathered at sacred sites for over 6,000 years. Most travelers skip Manitoba entirely on their way to the Rockies. What they miss is extraordinary. In this video, we journey from the polar bear capital of the world to ancient meeting places where two rivers converge. From one of Earth's largest freshwater lakes to a city built entirely on billion-year-old rock, from Icelandic fishing villages to sacred stone formations that predate written history. This is the Manitoba that guidebooks forget to mention. This is Canada's untamed heartland. "1,700 kilometers north of Winnipeg, on the frozen shores of Hudson Bay, sits a town that no road can reach. Churchill, population, 900 humans, visitors, thousands of polar bears. Wildlife researchers have documented what happens here each autumn. As Hudson Bay begins to freeze, the world's largest land carnivores gather along this coastline, waiting for the ice that will carry them to their hunting grounds. And this small subarctic town finds itself hosting one of nature's most remarkable concentrations of apex predators. Travelers arrive by train or plane. There is no other way. The journey itself becomes part of the adventure. A 2-day rail voyage through boreal forest, across frozen rivers, into a landscape that grows wilder with every passing hour. But polar bears are only the beginning. Each summer, something equally extraordinary unfolds in the waters of the Churchill River estuary. Over 57,000 beluga whales migrate into Hudson Bay, with nearly 4,000 entering these shallow waters to feed, give birth, and raise their young. Marine biologists call them the canaries of the sea for their haunting underwater songs. Kayakers report belugas swimming alongside them, curious and playful, close enough to touch. And then there are the lights. Churchill sits directly beneath the auroral oval. The northern lights appear here on 300 nights each year. Scientists travel from around the world to study this phenomenon, but no amount of research prepares you for the experience itself. Ribbons of green and purple fire rippling across the Arctic sky. Some visitors report hearing them, a faint crackling like distant electricity. Science cannot fully explain it. The Inuit have known this place for thousands of years. Prince of Wales Fort, built by the Hudson's Bay Company in the 1700s, still stands on the opposite shore, a stone fortress at the edge of the known world. Churchill is not easy to reach. It is not cheap. It is not comfortable. But those who make the journey discover something rare, a place where the wild still rules, where humans remain visitors, not masters. And that wildness calls to something ancient within us. If Churchill represents Manitoba's wild edge, the next destination might be even more extraordinary. At the heart of the continent, two rivers meet. The red, flowing north from Minnesota. The Assiniboine, arriving from the Western Plains. Their confluence has drawn human beings for over 6,000 years. The Anishinaabe call this place Nestawaya, the meeting place. Archaeological excavations conducted between 1989 and 1994 unearthed more than 400,000 artifacts here. A 6,000-year-old hearth, stone tools, fish bones, evidence of camps where indigenous bison hunters gathered, traded, celebrated, and mourned. Long before any Europeans set foot on this continent, this junction of waters served as a crossroads for nations. Today, the Forks remains what it has always been, a gathering place. 4 million visitors come each year. They walk the same ground where Cree and Ojibwe once traded furs, where Métis voyageurs launched their canoes, where immigrant families stepped off trains, beginning new lives in a new world. But step beyond the Forks, and Winnipeg reveals another face entirely. The Exchange District, 20 city blocks of turn-of-the-century architecture, so remarkably preserved that Hollywood regularly transforms these streets into period film sets. In 1997, the Government of Canada declared it a National Historic Site. Between 1880 and 1913, Winnipeg exploded from a modest frontier settlement into Western Canada's largest metropolis. They called it the Chicago of the North. By 1920, more than half the world's wheat sales passed through the Winnipeg Grain Exchange. 24 rail lines converged here. Banks established their western headquarters along Main Street's Bankers Row. The terracotta facades, the Chicago-style warehouses, the early skyscrapers, they remain, a frozen moment of ambition and prosperity. And rising above it all, a building unlike anything else in Canada, the Canadian Museum for Human Rights, the first national museum ever built outside Ottawa, the world's first museum dedicated solely to human rights. Architect Antoine Prédoc designed it as a journey from darkness into light. Visitors descend into the earth through galleries carved in stone, then rise through alabaster ramps toward a tower of hope. It stands at the Forks, on ground that has witnessed 6,000 years of human gathering. Some places simply collect history. This place breathes it. Yet history represents only one dimension of Manitoba's character. Beyond the city limits, nature operates on a scale that humbles human achievement. An hour north of Winnipeg lies a body of water so vast, early explorers mistook it for an ocean, a lake that contains more secrets than most provinces. The numbers alone stagger the imagination. 24,514 square kilometers of fresh water, 436 kilometers from north to south. The 10th largest freshwater lake on Earth. Canada's 6th largest, an inland sea in the heart of the continent. Lake Winnipeg. When locals speak of going to the coast, they mean these shores, and the beaches here rival anything in Canada. Grand Beach stretches nearly 3 kilometers along the eastern shore. Fine white sand, grass-topped dunes rising behind. In summer, the water warms enough for swimming, and the beach fills with families escaping the city. But Lake Winnipeg is far more than a summer playground. Geologists have documented its origins. This vast body of water is a remnant of glacial Lake Agassiz, a prehistoric inland sea that once covered much of central North America. When the glaciers retreated 12,000 years ago, they left behind this, a lake so large it generates its own weather patterns, so shallow in places that storms can transform calm waters into churning fury within minutes. More fish species live in Lake Winnipeg than in any other Canadian lake west of the Great Lakes. 60 native species: walleye, northern pike, the famous greenback walleye that draw anglers from around the world. Each winter, ice fishing villages spring up across the frozen surface. Each summer, commercial fishers continue a tradition that has sustained communities here for generations. Thirty different communities line these shores: fishing villages, beach towns, First Nations reserves, cottage country, each with its own character, each shaped by the lake that defines their existence. The Cree named it Winnipeg, muddy waters. Look where the rivers enter, and you understand why. But venture further out, and the water clears, the horizon disappears. You could be on an ocean. National Geographic named Lake Winnipeg one of Canada's 50 places of a lifetime. Most Canadians have never heard of it, but those who have explored these shores know something else, that the communities lining this inland sea carry stories as compelling as the water itself. In the next chapter, a 15-foot Viking stands guard over a town that speaks Icelandic, a town that once declared itself an independent nation within Canada. In 1875, a volcanic eruption in Iceland triggered famine and desperation. Thousands fled their homeland, seeking a new beginning across the Atlantic. They found it here, on the western shores of Lake Winnipeg. The settlers called their new home Gimli. In Norse mythology, the name means paradise. The land they claimed became New Iceland. For nearly a decade, it operated as a semi-autonomous Icelandic colony within Canada. They established their own government, their own laws, their own traditions. 150 years later, those traditions endure. Gimli today hosts the largest concentration of Icelandic descendants outside Iceland itself. The Icelandic Festival of Manitoba, Íslendingadagurinn, has run continuously since 1890. It stands as the second oldest continuous ethnic festival in North America. Each August, the town transforms. Viking reenactors stage shield wall battles on the harbor grounds. Traditional foods appear in every restaurant. The Fjolkona, the Maid of the Mountain, presides over ceremonies in her ceremonial white gown and golden belt. A 15-foot Viking statue guards the harbor, unveiled in 1967 by the President of Iceland himself. But the Icelandic heritage runs deeper than festivals and statues. Walk into H.P. Tergesen and Sons, the general store that has served this community for 4 generations. Browse the shelves of the New Iceland Heritage Museum. Listen to the old-timers at the fishing docks, some of whom still speak Icelandic at home. The interlake region surrounding Gimli offers its own quiet beauty: rolling farmland, quiet lakes, villages where Ukrainian church domes rise above prairie fields, a landscape of immigrant stories, layered one upon another. Gimli's beaches draw summer visitors from across Manitoba. The pier extends into Lake Winnipeg, offering views that stretch to the horizon. Fish and chips shops serve fresh-caught pickerel. The pace slows. The stress dissolves. This is not the Manitoba of postcards and tourism campaigns. This is something rarer, a living culture, a community that remembers where it came from and refuses to forget. The Icelandic settlers who founded Gimli were not alone. 1 year later, another wave of refugees from the same volcanic disaster pushed further north to an island in Lake Winnipeg that they would name after the very volcano they had fled. Their story of survival, collapse, and resurrection may be Manitoba's most remarkable. The causeway crosses grassy Narrows Marsh, one of Manitoba's finest wetlands. Great blue herons stand motionless in the shallows. Pelicans glide overhead. The rare western grabe nests among the reeds, and ahead, rising from Lake Winnipeg, an island that time nearly forgot. Hecla. Named for one of Iceland's most active volcanoes, Icelandic settlers arrived here in 1876, 1 year after the first wave reached Gimli. They called it Mikli, the magnificent island. For nearly a century, they built a self-sufficient community on these shores. Fishing, farming, trapping, quarrying limestone, surviving winters that would break lesser spirits. By the 1960s, the fishery had collapsed. Young people left for opportunities elsewhere. The island's population dwindled towards zero. Then something remarkable happened. The community banded together. They petitioned the Manitoba government to transform their dying settlement into a provincial park, not to erase their history, but to preserve it. In 1975, Hecla Provincial Park officially opened. Today, visitors walk the restored village. The old schoolhouse serves as an interpretive center. The heritage home depicts life as an Icelandic family lived it in the 1920s. The fish station still operates, a working reminder of the industry that built this place. The general store sells provisions much as it did a century ago. But Hecla holds older stories still. Black Island, visible across the water, carries spiritual significance for the Ojibwe. Maidiwin ceremonies have taken place there for generations. The island remains a gathering place for berry picking, hunting, and social events. Some histories cannot be displayed in museums. The park encompasses over 1,000 square kilometers. Hiking trails wind through boreal forest. Limestone cliffs drop to silica sand beaches. Moose browse in the wetlands. Black wolves patrol territories that haven't changed in millennia. Hecla Island proves something important, that preservation and memory can coexist, that a community's story doesn't end when its economy changes. Some places deserve to be remembered. Hecla refuses to let us forget. Human stories shape the land, but in Manitoba, the land itself tells stories older than any human presence. West of Winnipeg, a forested escarpment rises from the prairie like an island in a sea of wheat. Within its boundaries, something occurs that scientists say happens nowhere else on Earth. 3 separate worlds colliding in a single park. The Manitoba Escarpment rises 457 meters above the surrounding farmland, a forested island in a sea of prairie, and within its boundaries, something remarkable occurs. Three distinct ecosystems converge in a single park. Boreal forest sweeps down from the north. Aspen parkland rolls in from the east. Fescue grassland stretches up from the south. Researchers have documented species from all three zones living within kilometers of each other, a biological crossroads found nowhere else on Earth. Riding Mountain became Manitoba's first national park in 1933, but human presence here stretches back far longer. The Cree, the Assiniboine, and the Ojibwe hunted these forests for thousands of years. The Ojibwe First Nation still lives within the park's boundaries, their land returned after decades of injustice. For most visitors, the journey begins at Clear Lake, crystal waters surrounded by forest. The town site of Wasagaming offers restaurants, shops, and a historic dance pavilion. Families rent canoes. Hikers disappear into 400 kilometers of trails. Winter brings cross-country skiing and snowshoeing through silent white forests. But the park holds a deeper purpose. At Lake Audie, a herd of approximately 40 plains bison roam a 500-hectare enclosure. They are descendants of animals reintroduced in the 1940s, part of a conservation effort that pulled this species back from the edge of extinction. Imagine the scene that once covered these plains, dark brown specks stretching to the horizon, hooves thundering across grassland, the earth itself trembling. Within a single generation, that world vanished. Overhunting drove the bison to near total destruction. The animals at Lake Audie represent something fragile, a second chance, a reminder of what was lost and what might yet be saved. Moose browse the wetlands, black bears forage in berry patches, wolves patrol the backcountry, elk bugle during autumn ruts. Riding Mountain offers no dramatic peaks or famous landmarks. What it offers is richer, a complete ecosystem, a living laboratory, a place where the prairie meets the forest, meets the north, and where the bison still roam. If Riding Mountain represents nature's harmony, our next destination defies all logic entirely. 2 hours southwest, in the heart of the flattest province in Canada, sand dunes rise 30 meters into the sky. Cacti bloom. Lizards scurry across scorching ground. Two hours west of Winnipeg, in the heart of the Canadian prairies, sand dunes rise 30 meters into the sky. This should not exist, yet here it stands. Spirit Sands, Manitoba's only desert landscape, a remnant of an ancient world that refuses to disappear. Geologists have traced its origins to glacial Lake Agassiz. When that prehistoric sea drained, it left behind the sandy delta of the Assiniboine River. For thousands of years, vegetation slowly reclaimed the exposed sand, but this small patch resisted. Wind patterns, soil conditions, and microclimate conspired to preserve a fragment of desert in the middle of the grasslands. The Anishinaabe consider this land sacred. They call the entrance the place of beginnings. Visitors walking these dunes walk on hallowed ground, and the landscape rewards that reverence. cacti grow here. Prickly pear and ball cactus, species more commonly found in Arizona or New Mexico. The northern prairie skink, Manitoba's only lizard, skitters across the hot sand. Western hognose snakes burrow beneath the surface, their upturned snouts perfectly adapted for this environment. But the true wonder lies deeper in the park. The Devil's Punch Bowl, a crater-shaped lake fed by underground springs. The water glows an impossible emerald green, filtered through limestone bedrock. Boardwalks lead down to its shores. The temperature drops. The air changes. You have entered another world entirely. Summer temperatures on the dunes can exceed 50 degrees Celsius. Hikers are advised to carry abundant water and avoid midday expeditions. The sand reflects heat with brutal efficiency. Horse-drawn wagon rides offer a gentler way to experience spirit sands, a nod to the pioneers who first crossed this landscape, marveling at what they found. Spruce Woods Provincial Park surrounds the desert with lush, deciduous forest. The contrast is startling. Walk 10 minutes and the ecosystem transforms completely. Nature, it seems, enjoys contradictions. Manitoba's desert proves it. But if Spirit Sands represents geological surprise, the landscape to the east offers something more profound. The Canadian Shield awaits, and with it, the oldest story Manitoba has to tell. The pink granite begins without warning. One moment, prairie farmland. The next, the Canadian Shield, billion-year-old rock, polished smooth by glaciers, rising from forests and lakes that stretch to the horizon. Welcome to Whiteshell Provincial Park, 2,750 square kilometers of ancient shield country, less than 2 hours east of Winnipeg. The Ojibwe named this place for the sacred white cowrie shells used in their ceremonies. The Midiwin, the Grand Medicine Society, has practiced here for generations. This land carries spiritual weight that no park boundary can contain. At Bannock Point, that spiritual legacy becomes visible. Scattered across flat granite bedrock, stones have been arranged into figures, turtles, snakes, humans, geometric patterns, whose meanings remain partially hidden. Petroforms, researchers call them, rock arrangements created over at least 1,500 years of continuous use. These are not artifacts in the usual sense. The Anishinaabe and other First Nations still use this site for teaching and healing. Cloth offerings hang from surrounding trees. Tobacco is left in gratitude. Visitors are asked to move nothing, touch nothing, and carry away only understanding. The exact interpretations vary. Some formations represent creation stories, others serve as teaching tools, astronomical calendars, or maps of spiritual journeys. There are many levels of meaning, and many ways to learn from these stones. Beyond Bannock Point, Whiteshell offers adventures of a different sort. West Hawk Lake fills a meteor crater, the deepest lake in Manitoba at 111 meters. The impact occurred 100 million years ago. Today, swimmers plunge into waters formed by cosmic violence. Caddy Lake features tunnels blasted through rock during railway construction. Kayaks paddle through dark passages, emerging into quiet bays on the other side. Over 200 lakes dot the park. Fishing, camping, hiking, paddling. The activities are familiar, but the setting transforms them. This is not tamed wilderness. This is the Canadian Shield, raw and ancient, shaped by forces that dwarf human timescales. Walk the Whiteshell, and you walk on rock older than complex life on Earth. That perspective changes everything. Ancient rock tells one kind of story, but 5 hours north, water tells another. Hidden at the end of a rough gravel road lies a lake that world experts call the finest of its kind on the planet. A lake that performs a magic trick few visitors ever witness. "5 hours north of Winnipeg, at the end of a rough gravel road, lies a lake that scientists call the finest of its kind on Earth. Little Limestone Lake, the world's largest and most dramatic marl lake. Marl lakes are geological rarities. Their waters contain high concentrations of calcium carbonate, dissolved from limestone bedrock over centuries. When temperatures rise, the calcite precipitates out of solution, forming microscopic crystals that transform the water's appearance. At Little Limestone Lake, this transformation reaches spectacular extremes. Morning temperatures produce brilliant turquoise, almost tropical in intensity. By afternoon, as the water warms, the lake shifts to robin's egg blue. On the hottest summer days, it turns milky white, like liquid pearl. In winter, when temperatures plunge to -40, the process reverses. The crystals dissolve. The water becomes crystal clear. The lake literally changes color before your eyes. The Mosakahikan Cree Nation has stewarded this land for generations. When the provincial government designated Little Limestone Lake a protected area in 2011, they signed a memorandum of understanding, ensuring cooperative management. First Nations' rights to hunting, trapping, fishing, and traditional pursuits remain protected. Reaching the lake requires commitment. The road is unpaved, unmarked in places, and easy to miss. There are no facilities, no visitor center, no gift shop. This is a non-operational provincial park, preserved not for tourism, but for protection. Those who make the journey find something extraordinary. Surrounding forests shelter woodland caribou, a threatened species. Bears and lynx prowl the boreal wilderness. Eagles circle overhead. The landscape features classic karst geology, sinkholes, caves, peculiar rock formations sculpted by water over millennia. But the lake itself demands attention. 15 kilometers long, 4 kilometers wide. Nothing little about it, except the name. World-class scientists have studied these waters. Experts have declared Little Limestone the most outstanding example of a marl lake on the planet, and hardly anyone knows it exists. Some wonders hide in plain sight. Manitoba keeps its secrets well. Little Limestone Lake represents nature's artistry, but our final destination represents something else entirely: human stubbornness. The determination to build a life where geography itself says no. Welcome to the edge of the known world. The city emerges from the wilderness like a fever dream. Buildings perched on exposed bedrock, streets carved into billion-year-old Canadian shield. A community that straddles two provinces, jointly administered by Manitoba and Saskatchewan, defying conventional geography. Flin Flon, named after a fictional character from a 1905 dime novel. The story goes that prospectors exploring this region in 1915 found a tattered paperback floating in the wilderness, The Sunless City, by J.E. Preston Muddock. Its hero, Professor Josiah Flintabate Flonetin, traveled to the center of the earth through a bottomless lake. The prospectors liked the name. When they struck copper and zinc, they applied it to their discovery. A 15-foot statue of the fictional professor now guards the city's entrance. Designed by Al Capp, creator of the Lyle Abner comic strip, a monument to a character who never existed, in a city that perhaps shouldn't. Flin Flon's surface topology consists almost entirely of exposed bedrock. Agriculture is impossible. Gardens require imported soil. Houses anchor directly to stone. The nickname tells the truth. The city built on rock. Yet people have built lives here for nearly a century. The railroad arrived in 1928, connecting Flin Flon to the Pas and the outside world. Mining operations transformed a wilderness outpost into an industrial center. Copper, zinc, the minerals that modern civilization cannot function without. Flinty's boardwalk circles Ross Lake, offering views of the unique landscape. Interpretive signs explain how volcanic rocks erupted underwater millions of years ago, creating the formations visible today. It is geology made personal. Beyond Flin Flon, northern Manitoba stretches toward infinity. Grass River Provincial Park offers some of Canada's finest wilderness paddling. Clearwater Lake lives up to its name, with visibility reaching depths that seem impossible. The Northern Trappers Festival in the Pas has run since 1916, making it Manitoba's oldest continuous festival. This is frontier country, sparsely populated, uncompromising, beautiful in ways that demand effort to appreciate. The boreal forest extends to Hudson Bay. The northern lights blaze overhead. Wildlife outnumbers humans by orders of magnitude. Flin Flon and its neighbors stand as outposts of civilization in a wilderness that cares nothing for human ambition. Perhaps that is what makes them worth visiting, a reminder of scale, of humility, of what lies beyond our comfortable boundaries. And so our journey ends where the roads run out, where the boreal forest stretches unbroken to the Arctic, where human settlement becomes a fragile exception rather than the rule. But ending here feels right, because Manitoba itself is a place of edges, where prairie meets forest, where south meets north, where the familiar gives way to the wild. We began at the edge of the Arctic, where polar bears wait for ice and beluga whales sing in frigid waters. We traveled through 6,000 years of human gathering, where rivers converge and stories accumulate like sediment. We stood on the shores of an inland sea, on beaches that rival any in Canada. We walked among Viking descendants and Icelandic traditions, preserved against all odds on distant shores. We witnessed ecosystems collide, prairie meeting forest meeting tundra, bison reclaiming grasslands their ancestors once dominated. We found a desert where no desert should exist, and a lake that changes color with the temperature. We traced ancient stone arrangements laid by hands we will never know, and stood on rock older than complex life on Earth. We discovered a color-changing lake that world experts call the finest example of its kind, and a city built entirely on billion-year-old stone. This is Manitoba, not the Manitoba of transit lounges and connecting flights, not the province travelers cross on their way to somewhere else. This is the Manitoba that rewards those who pay attention, who venture beyond the obvious, who understand that the greatest destinations often hide in unexpected places. The polar bears will return to Churchill this autumn, as they have for thousands of years. The northern lights will blaze. The beluga whales will sing. The bison will graze on restored prairie. The lakes will shimmer in colors that seem borrowed from tropical seas, and Manitoba will remain what it has always been. Canada's untamed heartland, waiting to be discovered.